right. Got one. Oh shit. Oh!
So in case you haven't heard, there's this little game that released into early access not so long ago called BattleBit Remastered. It was created by 3 people, looks like modded Minecraft, and it's topped only by CSGO on Steam's top sellers list at the time of recording this, with an average of 60 to 80,000 people playing the game online at any given time. BattleBit is fantastic. It's the closest thing I've got to reliving my days of spending hours and hours every day playing Battlefield 4 with my friends after high school. But what really surprised me about it is that there are a lot of ways in which it completely outshines the EA titles by which it's so clearly been influenced by. If you just want to know whether or not you should buy it, then I fully recommend BattleBit for anyone who loved Battlefield 3 or 4. It's the most fun I've had with a multiplayer first-person shooter since playing those games. For those who like the general idea of the Battlefield series but could never get into it, I also recommend you give it a try, as there are things about it that make the gameplay a little bit more in-depth than those games. Considering the game's price of $15 or your regional equivalent, I doubt you won't be able to get your money's worth even if you end up not liking it. And as for everyone else, let's see what exactly it is about BattleBit that makes it so great. Let's get the obvious point out of the way first. There's a lot that can be said about the way that this game looks. If you've seen any of my other videos about older games, you'll know that I don't really care about graphics very much at all, as long as they are designed to work well within the game in question. You see, there's been this weird trend in gaming as of the past few years where every new AAA game coming out is seemingly expected to push the boundaries of graphical fidelity further and further into the grasp of the RTX void. For many new big-budget titles, it seems like the graphics take the vast majority of the spotlight in their marketing, and I assume dev time to some limited extent, whereas gameplay can sometimes feel like an afterthought. It's one thing if your game looks great and runs great too on the average PC or console, but it's a whole other issue if the opposite is true. Take Cyberpunk, for example, a game I played for a little over 12 hours at release and have yet to touch again since. This will only take a minute. I know how impatient some of you people get. Please make sure to leave a comment about how you couldn't get past 1 minute of me talking about a topic adjacent to the game I'm talking about. It makes you look very smart. I'm not going to say that Cyberpunk was a terrible game. I was interested enough in the story it had to tell that I could have at least finished it once. But the thing is, this action-adventure game could barely hold 60 FPS, even with my graphics nuked to maximum starchdom, to a point where not only was my gameplay experience affected, but that also made it look like it was released 3 generations behind. And if that's how the average gamer is going to experience your product, then what's even the point in draining all of that money on the game's graphics? This graphical trend we're witnessing is, at best, redundant, as the vast majority of players will never see or benefit from it with the hardware they have available, and at worst, destructive, because you're actively raising this goalpost of who gets to enjoy our shit unoptimized game higher and higher. BattleBit is such a breath of fresh air in that regard, because it's a clear example of what happens when a game is created on the basis of having excellent gameplay first and foremost. Now, I want to be clear. Saying that this game has basic graphics is a fair statement. An unfair statement would be to say that the graphics in BattleBit are bad. To me, a big component of a game's graphics being outright bad is when there is something about the way that they are designed that diminish the experience of playing the game. And in that regard, there is very little about the graphical design of BattleBit that I could call anything but good. Because sure, if you didn't know anything about it, you might think it's some sort of kids game. But here's just some of the ways in which BattleBit benefits from looking like Roblox military RP. Performance and accessibility. I have found exactly one instance where the game stutters for me, and that's when I hold tab to see the 254 players on the scoreboard, which is the biggest server size in the game. It freezes for about a second or two if I haven't updated it in a while. I have not experienced even a single stutter in the game apart from this. I have also never even got close to dropping below 100 frames per second, even with the vast amount of crazy shit that can happen in matches. Now granted, games like this one tend to be quite CPU intensive, and I recently had a pretty major upgrade in that department. But judging by even the recommended specs on the game store page, not to even mention the minimum requirements, I have no doubt that this hunk of shit that I had up until December of last year would have handled BattleBit without much of a problem, which is great if your goal is to try and get as many people to play your game as you possibly can. Something that's kind of getting lost in today's world of visual wankery that is the games industry. Scale. The maps in BattleBit are big. Their exact size isn't really well documented from what I can tell. However, Asgore and Wakistan, which are some of the smaller maps available in the bigger conquest modes, are set to be 2 by 2 kilometers squared. I'd hazard a guess and say that most other maps easily double this size, which is quite impressive considering there are 19 of them available to play right now. 2 by 2 kilometers squared may not sound like a lot, but if you consider the fact that Golmund Railway, one of the bigger maps in vanilla Battlefield 4, was only about 1.5 kilometers squared, you can start to see just how big BattleBit really is. The size of the maps isn't just a flex either. I imagine that playing the aforementioned Golmund Railway on Battlefield 4 up to 127 players on each side would be a terrible experience. Not only would you not be able to move anywhere without instantly being sniped or blown up, but I reckon the engine wouldn't even be able to handle keeping track of that many people on a server without starting to desync or lag. But it doesn't just stop at the size of the maps. Some of the most fun I've had in BattleBit has been in the domination game mode on urban maps such as Frugus or Lonovo. And that's because of the sheer amount of destruction that the game accommodates. Battlefield was always known for its destruction physics, how you could blow up holes in buildings for example, or the dreaded Levolution in Battlefield 4 that ruined more maps than it made more interesting to play in. By the way, Levolution is a thing in BattleBit and they do it a lot better. The thing is though, there weren't actually that many buildings in those games that could be destroyed. Destructible buildings were usually only placed near objectives, and it wasn't all that uncommon to see explosives do next to nothing when hitting certain structures, though some maps were better about this over others. I imagine some of this was done due to balancing reasons or to help with performance, if not both. BattleBit doesn't have to worry about performance though, so 99% of structures in this game can be blown up and destroyed, no matter where they are on the map. And I can't help to think that, had this game looked like Escape from Tarkov, which isn't actually that much of a stretch considering they're both made in the same engine, that this amount of destructibility would simply have been impossible, assuming everything else was left the same as is now. Visibility. One of the results of the basic nature of the graphics in BattleBit is great visibility. This partly ties into performance, as most systems aren't going to run into much trouble with maxing out the render distance in the game. However, when I first heard of BattleBit, I was a little worried because I assumed that the blocky design of the player models was going to make them too easy to spot from a distance. However, I think that the ease at which you can spot other players in the world is pretty much spot on where it needs to be. It can often be easy to spot people out in the open, but that's a good thing as it forces players to be smart about how they move and where they take cover. Storage. I'm getting pretty tired of the fact that I have to free up hundreds of gigabytes worth of storage just to be able to play most modern AAA games nowadays. And even more so when I consider the fact that the vast majority of these file sizes come from the high-resolution textures that I'm not even going to be able to run anyway. Racevic dedicated an entire video on this topic, which is great because there's going to be enough tangents in this video as is. BattleBit, on the other hand, takes up a whole 2.1 gigabytes on my hard drive, which, graphics aside, is still pretty amazing considering all of the content it provides. I think you get the point. The basic look of BattleBit serves a ton of benefits for both the people playing the game, as well as, I imagine, the 3 people that work on it. I don't doubt that creating new content, like weapons and maps, is a whole lot faster and easier when you don't have to worry about high polygon counts and other such factors. However, where I think the game surprised me the most was just how much I didn't even pay attention to them while playing. I have been so immersed in matches throughout my time with BattleBit that I've completely forgotten what game I was even playing, and it wouldn't be until moments where something funny happens in the game or on voice chat, or when I would stop and look at someone's face where I would be brought back and think, oh yeah, this isn't actually Battlefield. This game should be fucking studied by every developer working in DICE, or any other AAA games company for that matter, just so they can experience this phenomenon for themselves. There is a reason for why every new Battlefield game that comes out fails, and BattleBit is proof that it's not because they look worse than their predecessors. Imagine if all of that money that gets sunk into pushing these graphics that are all going to end up looking dated in a few years anyway, was instead put towards hiring talented game designers that know what makes games fun to play. Because if there is one thing that BattleBit proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that gameplay is still king. And well, since I've mentioned it now, it's time to talk a little bit about the gameplay in BattleBit Remastered. The reason for why I recommended BattleBit to people who could never really get into Battlefield at the start of this video is because of another game that it borrows a lot of its design from. That game being Squad. On the one hand, the core DNA of Battlefield makes its presence known in BattleBit. This is a fast-paced game, for instance, where the movement speed for most infantry is quick and the recoil of your weapons is low enough where you can kill players with automatic fire up to medium ranges with most guns. You also have the general team and squad-centric gameplay that the Battlefield series is known for. You may be familiar with most of the classes you can play as, for example, all of which serve very similar roles to those in Battlefield 3 and 4. However, there have been a number of mechanical changes inspired by Squad that greatly improve the game in a lot of ways. One of the biggest changes comes with the fact that teammates can now be revived by any class. Medics will still do a lot faster, and can also heal the freshly revived player as long as they have their medkit equipped. But all other classes can now revive a downed teammate as long as they have bandages to do so, at a significantly slower speed. Medics spawn with 20 bandages, whereas everyone else spawns with 3. This is a fantastic change for many reasons. Your chances of a revive when you've been downed have now went up dramatically, because you no longer have to rely on just medics to get you back up, only to heal you back up to full HP. This should also incentivize players in squads to try out different classes, as medics aren't as necessary for the success of a match if everyone can revive everyone. I emphasized should because the medic class has some problems in this current version of the game, and I will go into more detail on that when I go over every class individually. To tie in with the new revive system, you can now also drag any downed teammate as long as they haven't bled out or given up and returned to the spawn menu. This takes care of a problem in Battlefield 3 and 4, where medics could only revive you at the exact spot where you died, often reviving you back into the direct line of fire where you would inevitably die again. And because reviving, even as a medic, takes a great deal longer than the defibrillators in the Battlefield games, dragging your friends to safety has some obvious advantages also. BattleBit also tailored the dragging mechanic to suit its own faster-paced gameplay over that of Squad, through the fact that you can now revive your teammates as you drag them away to safety, which is one of the many ways in which this game brilliantly melds these arcade and milsim style mechanics together. Moving away from revives, BattleBit opts for the more milsim style of magazine management present in games like Squad and Arma, just to name two examples, as opposed to the more arcade style of Battlefield and Call of Duty, where you can keep spawning brand new full magazines as long as your total ammo count allows for it. I think ammo systems like the one in BattleBit will usually benefit any game that uses it. It gets you out of the habit of tapping reload after literally every single kill you score, and people tend to be a lot more conservative with their shots, which gives you a little bit more freedom to move around without having hundreds of shots fly past your head as soon as you peek your big toe around a corner. I can understand that some people might find this magazine management frustrating in more arcade-like shooters, but I rarely ever run into a situation in BattleBit where I run out of full magazines to load, thanks to one simple mechanic which allows you to combine your magazines in exchange for just a couple seconds of your time. It's such a small thing, but it makes a big difference in rewarding you for paying attention, and also means that you can be effective for longer without having to find a resupply point or a support player, of which there aren't that many going around in matches, and again, I will talk about why later. There are two more major draws from Squad that come in the form of squad points and voice chat. The former is a currency earned by your squad when capturing objectives, points which then can be spent by your squad leader to build fortifications, set up rally points, and to airdrop ammunition crates. There's also this mystery airstrike that I have yet to see anyone actually use, meaning it's either very expensive or simply not implemented yet. These are all great additions, and the only real criticism I have to make is that the ammo drop takes so long to land after it's called in that it's almost useless in most situations. You either have to call it in well in advance of when you're going to need it, by which time it might not even matter anymore, or you just forget about it completely and make sure you have a support player in your squad to top you off. Voice chat, on the other hand, is pure gold.
They're coming from the up. Blue beam. No problem. No, give me him! Okay, guys, are you ready? We have to go through the trenches, and we have to start rush the B. Are you ready?
Yes, rush me.
Yeah, follow me. Yeah, hurrah!
Allahu Akbar.
Rush me!
Chances are you've already seen a bunch of clips of the goofy shit that can happen over VoIP in BattleBit, and I can confirm that these sorts of scenarios are quite common. In fact, I was surprised at just how many people are actually using VoIP in the game, considering I'm playing on EU servers which tend to be completely silent in most games I've played. But other than the obvious meme factor of everyone screaming and pretending like they're in the thick jungles of Vietnam, the voice chat provides a lot of opportunities for tactical team play. Apart from proximity chat, there is a different button for communicating with your entire squad, and squad leaders also have their own channel they can use to communicate with each other, very similar to Squad. I hope someone is counting how many times the word squad has been said in this video. When all of this is combined together into the classic Battlefield formula, what you end up with is a game that can, all of a sudden, satisfy the desire of a much wider audience. If you want to just turn your brain off, go into a server and do your thing as a filthy scout, then these additions do not stop you from doing that. On the other hand, those who want to be a little bit more involved in the experience, either jumping in with a pre-made squad or just joining a random one, to try and help each other out and take objectives, there are a great deal more ways for you to do that compared to the more streamlined experiences of the Battlefield games. So everything I've said so far should be sounding pretty good to you if you enjoy team-centric multiplayer shooters. And even as I start to go into some of the balancing issues that BattleBit suffers from, I have to stress that they don't really take away from the overall experience of the game as is. If what you have heard up to this point has made you interested in giving the game a try, then I strongly urge you to do so. I really don't think you'll regret it. But the game isn't perfect. And to explore that, let's talk about all of the separate classes you can play as. But first, let me just mention a couple of things that they all have in common. All of the unlocks in the game, including weapons and special equipment, are unlocked by reaching certain overall profile ranks, meaning that you don't have to grind any specific class to unlock equipment for others. Attachments are sort of similar, except they are unlocked after achieving a certain amount of kills on whichever weapon you are using. For example, most primary weapons unlock a red dot sight after scoring 5 kills. I think it makes the most sense to start with the medic class, as it's by far the most popular of the 6 currently in the game. And that makes sense if you consider all of the things it has going for it. Before I even talk about all of the different equipment the medic has available to use, let's just start with the fact that this is the best class for quickly farming XP. Reviving and healing teammates awards you with an incredible amount of experience points, making it a great class for unlocking new equipment quickly in the early game. Spamming revives and heals is so effective at earning you experience that I've consistently been able to reach top 5 on the leaderboard in matches whilst barely killing anyone. This might sound like a bad thing, but actually I think it's a great way of incentivizing medic players into doing their jobs. Where the medic class really becomes unbalanced is with all of the equipment it has available. To start with, the medic gets access to pretty much all of the best weapons in the game, including the M4A1 that you get at level 1, but also all of the assault rifles, submachine guns, PDWs, and carbines, within which you will find some of the most devastating weapons currently available in the game, including the Chris Vector, P90, Scar H, and MP7, just to name a few. And that's just the primary weapons. The medic also has access to a plethora of different types of offensive and defensive equipment, including claymores, AP mines, C4 charges, advanced binoculars, and a smoke grenade launcher. On top of this, you also have access to the medkit, which allows you to heal yourself and others, as well as a maximum of 20 bandages at your disposal. In order to understand how broken having all of this equipment available as the medic actually is, let's compare it to the assault class. On paper, this should be the breakthrough class. Assault players should have access to all of the same weapons I just mentioned in the medic class. If they need to storm a building, they should have access to rapid-fire SMGs or PDWs. Otherwise, they should be able to equip assault rifles that allow them to be more effective out to medium ranges. However, only the latter is true, as the only weapon type available for the assault class at the time of recording this is assault rifles. This seems really backwards to me. I think if anything, medics should be the limited class in terms of weapon choice, whereas assault players should get access to the SMGs, PDWs, and carbines. And sure, they fare a little bit better on the equipment side of things, including items such as the grappling hook, riot shield, and even a small ammo box. But it's not enough to make them more useful on the battlefield due to the simple fact that the medics can do pretty much anything the assault class can, while also having the ability to heal themselves. The assault class simply feels like a lesser medic because of this, and there are a couple of simple solutions to fix this that I can think of. First of all, remove all of that equipment such as claymores, mines, and C4 from the medic class. This would already help the assault and support classes fulfill a need for defensive and offensive equipment. And on the weapons side of things, at the very least I would like to see more options made available for the assault class, preferably everything that is currently available for the medics. To be a little bit more extreme, however, I wouldn't be against limiting the medics to only being able to use the assault rifles. They're a good all-around weapon class, and the removal of PDWs, SMGs, and carbines would further encourage players to use the assault class more over the overly versatile medic. Since I've already talked about the assault class in great length, I would also propose some additional buffs to it that would further increase its use in the form of passive perks. While the assault class already has a buff to its reload speed, I think that a further upgrade in that department wouldn't go amiss. We're trying to make this the assault class after all, and a small change such as this could make a big difference in giving players a reason to choose this one over the medic. They can already swap weapons and aim down sights faster than other classes, but another buff that could help the assault class out could maybe go towards a reduced movement speed penalty while wearing body armor. Let's move on to the support class. It has the smallest roster of primary weapons at a grand total of 2 light support weapons and 2 light machine guns. This isn't a huge problem as they are all decently effective weapons, but adding a few more in each category would help to make the support class feel like it has a little bit more variety. The support class carries an ammo box which can be dropped down to allow teammates to replenish their equipment. Players have to be proactive in using the ammo box, however. They have to look at it and press use on it to actually be able to restock. Throughout my time playing as the support class, I have found that nobody ever uses the ammo boxes I have dropped down. I can yell over voice chat that I'm dropping one and no one really seems to care. The medic class can actually do something very similar to this, as they can drop a medkit for people to use when they get hurt. However, the big difference here is that the medic can also heal people whether they like it or not. You do not need an injured player's input to be able to heal them, and I have to wonder whether something similar could be done to the support class to make them more useful. The solution I have come up with is that the support class could give only primary ammo to players similarly to how the medic does it, by equipping the ammo box and holding right-click to fill out their magazines. players would still have to interact with a dropped ammo box to rearm their special equipment. Beardless Mage, a friend of the channel and one of the people I've been playing the game a lot with, proposed a backpack the class could equip that would allow other players to interact with to restock some of their ammo. Either way, there's a clear need for the support class to be able to provide ammo to teammates without them needing to rely on them to see a dropped ammo box. If nothing else, it would add another class next to the medic that's great for leveling up. I mentioned the existence of body armor briefly in the assault class section earlier, and the support class is unique in the fact that it starts out with a good set of body armor right from level 1. It allows you to take a fair chunk of more damage before dying, at the downside of reducing your movement speed by a significant amount. Clean made a great in-depth video about all of the classes in BattleBit, in which he talked a lot about the shortcomings of the armor as it exists in the game now. The biggest fault it has right now is that it only has a certain amount of hit points before it's depleted. However, not only does your movement speed remain unchanged once you've run out of body armor, but you also cannot refill it in any way without simply respawning. This is a pretty big issue because armor in BattleBit is undoubtedly important. You can die incredibly fast in this game if you're not careful. And I don't see any real reason for why you shouldn't be able to refill your armor after it's been damaged, even if it's only at the static supply points found on certain objectives around the maps for balancing, or at the very least be able to take it off once it's been depleted so that you are less encumbered. Onto the engineer class, and there isn't really that much to say about it. I think it's in a pretty good place as it stands now. It has access to some great weapons, including SMGs, PDWs, carbines, and DMRs, as well as an RPG with 6 spare rockets they can carry, which is a good amount. I did notice a surprising lack of anti-air options compared to the Battlefield games, but I think that was done on purpose. Most weapons, even small arms, can already deal a decent amount of damage to helicopters as is, and it avoids the helicopter experience of Battlefield 3 and 4, where your gameplay consisted of waiting for your flares to recharge before you were able to literally do anything without getting shot down. The leader squad is pretty much useless, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it removed within the next few major updates. It's a leftover from the tactical milsim that BattleBit was originally designed to be, and serves no real purpose in the game as is now. I imagined that this was going to be the class that you had to use to perform the squad leader actions that any class can use now, as long as they are actually designated as the leader of their squad in a match. You can completely forget about this class, just like how I completely forgot to take any notes on it for this script. And finally, we have the Sniper class. Snipers should feel pretty familiar to you if you've played Battlefield 3 or 4. They have access to sniper rifles and DMRs, as well as some decent gadgets such as the recon drone, grapple hook, and a device that spoofs sniper glints to distract enemy players. The biggest flaw with the Sniper class is really their lack of usefulness to their teammates. At least in Battlefield 4, recons could deploy a rally point, whereas this is now done by the squad leader. I'm not really sure what could be done to spice this class up, as sniper classes in games are inherently going to be a bit selfish in the fact that they're just out there to try and get kills from far away. Maybe they could have access to a more concealable spawn beacon that has a limited number of uses, for example. What I can say, however, is that the sound design of their weapons could be touched up a little bit. Most of the guns in BattleBit sound pretty good. They won't make your jaw drop to the floor or anything, but they all sound distinct and include little features such as the sound of your gunfire changing as you start running low on ammo in your magazine. However, most of the snipers sound incredibly underwhelming, the biggest culprit being the starter SSG-69, which sounds like a violent fart. It doesn't sound like a weapon that has the capability of killing someone with one shot to the head, like it actually does. In fact, most of the sniper rifles in the game suffer from being incredibly base heavy, with nothing on the high end. It's not until you reach weapons such as the Intervention or the MSR that they actually start to sound really good.
What is that, bro?
And that's all I really have to pick apart with BattleBit. It's a game that I will be playing for years to come, I have no doubt. And I cannot stress enough how amazing it is that a game made by 3 people and sold for a measly $15 was able to come out and influence the PC gaming market in such a major way. Although this may be wishful thinking, I do hope that the sudden success of BattleBit can sway the direction in which the AAA games industry has been plowing its way towards for the last decade. We want games that are fun to play first and foremost. Games that don't require the latest rip-off RTX cards just to be able to enjoy. And at the risk of repeating myself, if there is one thing that BattleBit proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's that graphics don't mean shit.
Want you to subscribe to me
Scav Merchant Hub.
on YouTube. Thank you, cringe. Bye.